The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, Concordant Body, Appendant Body, Masonic Authority, or CraftsmenOnline.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Craftsmen Online podcast, the only Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce, and you've joined us for our first listener email questions and answers episode. But first, a couple things. We are pushing to try to get 20 new subscribers on our Patreon feed. Yes, Craftsmen Online podcast is on Patreon. You can get the link to start your free 7-day trial and see what the benefits are. Ad-free episodes, you get them a week early, plus access to our entire subscriber back catalog, all for just $5 a month. And I'm going to give you a whole week to try it out. I want to thank one of our OG subscribers. He has been with us from literally the beginning. Worshipful Brother Jason Lee, one of our first international podcast listeners. Yes, listening every week from Germany. We appreciate your support as we push our mission to connecting men who have an interest in Freemasonry with our ancient and gentle craft. Also, a reminder, save the date. Our third annual Black Friday holiday shopping episode that's sponsored by bricksmasons.com again returns on Monday, November 24th, or November 17th if you're a Patreon listener. Brother Matthew Brockbank will be joining me back here in our virtual studio, continuing our holiday tradition of reviewing hard-to-find and, yes, those very out-of-the-box gift ideas for your favorite Freemason this holiday season. Thanks again to our friends at bricksmasons.com for sponsoring the third annual Black Friday holiday shopping episode coming up next month, Monday, 11/24. Okay, let's dive into this. I have been looking forward to this episode. It's special because it's the first time we put a call out for questions to our audience. Like, hey, you got a question about anything? Nothing was off the table. We could talk about Freemasonry. We could talk about Craftsmen Online, this podcast, or you could even ask a personal question to me, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. And guess what, guys? You did. So we're going to dive in and start answering what's on your mind. And question number one, this is kind of an easy one because we literally get this question at least 500 times a week. And I say this with some jokingness in my voice. A lot of the time, this comes through our website, craftsmenonline.com, which you haven't visited yet. You should go there. We got an amazing blog, so many great videos, Masonic education, cool stuff that's going on. We also get questions here through our podcast email, which is podcast@craftsmenonline.com. And while most of the people who write and ask a version of this question are not hailing here in North America, it is a very valid one to ask, and we've talked about it a lot on the show, so simply the question is, how do I join Freemasonry? That is an interesting one. I can tell you how I did it as a man living in North America. I was living in upstate New York at the time, and there's basically two ways. One is you are going to be going by a lodge building that you know to be one in your community. You've either passed it every single day on your way to work, you know where it is on that side of town for blood drives or other community events that may have taken place there. So yes, if you've seen that familiar square compass with the letter G in the center, that is a Masonic temple, and that's where Masons meet, usually either outside, posted somewhere in a sign, or just inside in the vestibule or near the front door. There will be a menu that lets you know when that lodge meets, and you can go and join them for dinner. There's probably also going to be some contact information if you're interested in visiting. I wouldn't just suggest showing up, but we're typically used to accepting visitors and welcoming them. So that's usually step one, is physically going to a Masonic lodge. You don't have to know anybody to become a Freemason. It doesn't matter if your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a Mason, or you are literally, like me, the first man in your family who's ever walked into a Masonic lodge. We would be happy to have you join us for a dinner to answer some questions and show you around the lodge and let you learn what you need to know. The second way to join a Masonic lodge in North America, I know this to be true in the US and throughout most of Canada, is you can open up your phone and do this thing called Google and search a Masonic lodge near me. Now, I'm going to throw a lot of caveats in here because I don't want to lead you down a crazy rabbit hole path, and there are some things about this search that are concerning, and I want you to know this. If you have an interest in Freemasonry, then I'm assuming you don't know very much about what we do, which is okay. And by what I mean what we do is how Masonic lodges and Freemasonry in general, at least here in North America, is structured. Let's have a quick talk about what regular means, because you're going to go onto your phone and you're going to hit this search. And if you type in regular Masonic lodges near me, I don't know what is going to pop up on your phone. But here's what regular means to us. It means that they fall under some jurisdictional authority. That means that Grand Lodge of the state of New York is in amity with the Grand Lodge of New Jersey and Connecticut and California and all of the other Grand Lodges around the world. What basically it means is that they follow the same 3-degree system and traditions that are well established across known and accepted Grand Lodges all around the globe. That's what a regular lodge is. An irregular lodge, very close in some aspects to a regular lodge, but for some reason, they're not recognized as a regular lodge. And some of it can get extremely political, so I'm just going to kind of avoid that conversation. Irregular, very close, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you may run into some problems just wanting to visit other lodges and sitting with other Masonic brothers. The third category, these are the clandestine lodges. And this is the thing that I'm really, really concerned about, because if you're listening to this podcast and you're emailing me and saying, hey, how do I become a Freemason? And we've gotten to this point in the conversation, you haven't already done your homework. You haven't found the lodge near you, and you're not looking on your phone to find a lodge. In my opinion, you are primed to get scooped up by one of these clandestine lodges, which are lodges who are trying to pretend to be Freemasons and are not anything Masonic, because the experience that they have is definitely a knockoff. So your regular lodge is basically that brand product that everybody knows. It's a household name. An irregular lodge is very close. It's like that second tier that's almost there, but it's not there. The clandestine lodge are the lodges that some guy spreads out a tarp and tries to sell you a knockoff product on the street, and you know that it's not the real thing, because why would a $300 handbag that your wife wants be able to be walked off with for like $35? That's the best way that I can answer this very simple question. And trust me, if it's a good fit for you, you'll know. All right, so let's bump on to question number 2. And I love this one, and I want to thank Ava Johnston in Peoria, Illinois, for sending it in. She writes, I am not a Mason. What is the single most important thing you think I should know about Freemasonry? We always talk about the idea of making good men better, and what does that mean? So if you've interacted with a Mason and he's used that term around you, personal development, leadership skills, I think you'd want to know that they have a very inquisitive intellect. They're truth seekers. They're independent thinkers. They like the company of other like-minded people that they can feel comfortable talking with, but they also, in the same breath, like to be around others that offer a different viewpoint or take on things, and they don't feel challenged by that. I think that's the most important thing that you should know about Freemasonry. You're going to look things up on the internet, and you're going to see all the wonderful American revolutionary ties that we have, some of the great presidents who are Freemasons, some of the most wonderful and amazing men throughout history who have been Freemasons, the wonderful charity work that we do, how involved we are in our communities. These are all very, very, very good things. But I think for your situation is how is it going to impact you personally? Is if you do interact with someone who says, yeah, I'm a Freemason, whether it's some guy that you work with, a dude that you met on the internet that you're interested in dating, or maybe you got a new family member this year. What do you need to know about Freemasons? They're good people. They're open-hearted. They're kind. They're the kind of people that if they see a problem, they're one of the first to stand up and want to go do something about it, and in a good way. When I put the call out in, I think it was August, we started asking or soliciting for emails for this listener episode. I got a huge one from Brother Jonathan Winters in upstate New York, and he had quite a few questions for this episode, so I wanted to hit them all up here in order. His first question is a really good one. He asks, where can I go to get a copy of everything that was said and performed during the entered apprentice degree? I want to study it more deeply. I have a disability. I would like something that I can read so that I can digest the lectures even more over time. Do you have any suggestions? What about the Livingston Library reading course? I love when sometimes people answer their own questions. The Livingston Library is a fantastic resource for any brother in the Grand Lodge of New York jurisdiction. Yes, I would highly recommend that. Let me just have a quick sidebar, and then I'm going to get to like where you can learn about everything that was said to you during your entered apprentice degree or fellow craft or even master mason degree. Livingston Library is fantastic. My advice is you're going to see that the reading courses that they have for the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, there will be quite an extensive waiting list to get some of those books, which is okay and which is cool. You can't actually start ordering them until you become a Mason. So I would say the night that you get that entered apprentice degree, the next morning, go on to the Grand Lodge of New York website, which is nymasons.org, click on the Livingston Library, get over to the Livingston Library reading course, and definitely get in line for the EA degree course, and then go ahead and put yourself down for the fellow craft and master mason. In my experience, I didn't get the EA resources. And again, this was like 10 years ago. So I know that there's a more demand for online learning now, but I wasn't getting the books for the EA degree until I was getting ready to wrap up my master mason's degree, which is fine because it was really good to kind of reinforce all of the things that I thought I learned in that first degree. So yes, Livingston Library is a fantastic resource for New York Masons. What about for everybody else? Well, I would say in most jurisdictions, the copy of everything that was said and performed during your entered apprentice degree, it's going to have different terms. Some jurisdictions call it a monitor, and I know in New York we call it the standard work and lecture. You might have heard it referred to as a ritual book. In most cases, they're tiny little books that look like really, really old school Bibles. You don't typically get those until you're a master mason. It's one of the, hey, you've now received all of the secrets of Freemasonry, and here's the little book that's going to be in a ciphered presentation so that you can read it. Hold on, brothers from the Grand Lodge of Illinois. I know that most of yours is in open text. That is the best example of where you're going to find all of the ritual word for word that was said and performed during your degrees. Specifically in the New York jurisdiction for our EA degrees, we have the catechism, and I know that you're going to get that little blue book, which is going to start your journey. Not everything that was said to you is going to be in your catechism as you study it, but it will account for the experience, let's say, and some of the steps that you went through during your degree work. The other thing I would say is whether you have a disability, some of us just see things better by witnessing in person. And that's the other way that you can learn so much about your degrees is going and seeing other degrees after you get yours. That's something that your lodge brothers should have offered to you and maybe even said, hey, let's go see this. Now that you're an entered apprentice, we can take you to this EA degree and you can see that. Of course, you can only see the degrees that you have actually gone through yourself. So don't expect to be able to go see a fellow craft or a master mason's degree if you are an EA. So Jonathan's next question is a good one too. He enjoys the catechism. It has a very cool heritage, but he didn't join Freemasonry to do ritual for the sake of doing ritual. Amen, bro. I have often said the same thing. I joined because I wanted to learn how to be a better man and how to better inculcate the virtues of the classical world. How do you suggest learning that part of Freemasonry? I will say this. In the early beginning for me as an entered apprentice, I famously told my Masonic mentor that I understand this catechism is what I have to learn to show that I can memorize something so that I can get the next degree. That's how I viewed it initially. I know it's so much more than that. During that catechism study is really where the real Masonic education takes place, where if you have a question about something that happens during the degree work, it gets answered. It should be kind of a one-on-one, or if you're going through the degree with a class, or that means more than one other brother that's a part of this degree, they try to keep the group together, so to speak. I always feel for guys that are going through degrees by themselves because they really can only have that conversation with their Masonic mentor. But if you're in a group with at least one, sometimes I've seen 10, 12 other guys all going through the degree together, man, that's amazing because you get so many different perspectives on things. That's your in-person level. You, yes, can read books on anything you want about Freemason, be it a EA or just somebody sitting on the sidelines. It really doesn't matter. If it's out in print, it is fair game. Even podcasts like the Craftsmen Online podcast, we don't give away any of the secrets, but we do talk about a lot of some of the points of the degrees and kind of let you know like where to look. I think that's what you're going to experience, is that there's really no one place to go to definitively. Some are going to point to Albert Pike's books or Mackey's, some of the classics. And yeah, you can try to take on that. But if you're trying to learn more about the craft outside of going through the ritual and studying the ritual, one of the books that honestly I was really happy to pick up as a fellow craft was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I instantly started making connections with some of the Masonic lessons that we learn in the first 2 degrees of Freemasonry compared to what he was writing about in his personal diary centuries ago. All right, last question from Brother Winters. Do I have to wait? And this is a really, really good one. Do I have to wait until I become a Master Mason to get involved in charitable activities? The answer is hell no. You don't even have to be a Mason to get involved with most of our charitable activities. We try to get into the community as much as possible. So no, don't have to be a Master Mason to get involved in the activities. I'm sure your lodge is going to have programs and initiatives and things that are important to them, causes that they reach out to. You can always give money for that. You can always volunteer for things in your communities. I guess the question is, do I have to wait to become a Master Mason to take leadership roles in these committees or in some of the lodge-sponsored events? And that, yes, you may have to wait for that moment, depending on how your lodge leadership tree is structured. But as far as getting involved, no, you don't even have to be a Freemason to roll up your sleeves and jump into it. And we welcome you to bring friends and family that can do it. All right, we are not even halfway through this special listener questions email episode. We're on to question number 5 from Brother Darren Keeler, who's a newly raised Master Mason, who writes, "Hello from a mile high in Colorado. What are the best ways to get involved in my lodge beyond just attending meetings?" Oh, Darren, that is such a good question, my guy. There's a lot of things. Look, I'm not going to say don't attend meetings. I think attending the meetings are honestly the best way that you can stay engaged with your lodge. They need you to be there. As a Master Mason, something that you say in the fellow craft degree that basically says, I'll be here and I'll be attending the meetings. Like, there's a reason why we put that in there. But how do you get involved with your lodge beyond the meetings? It kind of piggybacks off of the question that Brother Winters has, is that your lodge is going to have a lot of activities or events that are taking place throughout the calendar year. There are going to be leadership roles that are open, like serving on a committee or taking the driving role in planning some of these events, and they could always use help for that. But then there's also the support roles, which is, hey, I'll be the guy that shows up a little early to clean up or stays a little late to clean up again. You could also be like your lodge ambassador in the community, and I think we all serve our community in this role in some function, and that we're a Master Mason, we're out in public, we see something that's going on, whether it's, a program at work, it's a sporting event with your kids' team, your family, your church, whatever you see a need in that you can help better the community and can bring that to the lodge and say, hey guys, we need to do this and we need to do that. That's a way to get involved with your lodge beyond just attending meetings. There's also going to be tons of opportunity when it comes to helping the next brother. By that, I mean being a part of your lodge's ritual or degree team. There's never a shortage of conductors that need to be had for these degrees, and also probably many open parts where there's memorization. Hey, you don't want to learn ritual, you don't want to memorize things, I totally get it. The other way that you can be involved beyond just attending the meeting is attending the degrees, and honestly, visiting other lodges and being a part of those lodges' events would be huge. So I'm talking about festive boards, special dinners or outing events that they have for couples or partner nights. I know my lodge here in DC this year, we had a very successful cultural night that at the end of the RSVP period, we started seeing a lot of other brothers jumping in from visiting lodges, which was amazing because it just shows that Freemasonry is that. It doesn't matter what team, when I mean team, I mean what lodge you are a member of. You're a part of a much larger one, and being able to support each other in our events, that's super key. It's great for you, and it's also good for your lodge. Okay, we're on to question number 6, and this is a common one that we got, so I'm kind of summarizing this, and it's about ritual. It's a question, are there any tips? Do I have any tips for learning and memorizing ritual work? And this is going to be my controversial hot take here on the Craftsmen Online podcast. So a reminder, we do run that disclaimer that I think most people skip over in the beginning of the episode, where these views are mine and mine alone and not a member of any Grand Lodge or any grand jurisdiction. So take that as you may. When it comes to memorizing and learning the ritual work, this was the biggest struggle for me. Not because I have a learning disability or just don't have an aptitude to want to do it. It's just that I was busy, man. I was going through divorce. I was going back to school, working on my undergrad degrees. I had started a new job. There were a lot of changes that were taking place when I initially joined a lodge. And having to memorize, I think it was 30 minutes of back and forth questions and answers, and being able to do it at almost 100% proficiency, that was quite a challenge. So how did I learn this? Well, number one, and again, this sounds so simple, but these tiny little books, and literally like this, if you could hear this sound, that's how many pages were in my catechism book on the 1st and 2nd degree. I wore that thing to work literally every day. And I understand some people don't have a desk job, and even fewer of us have like offices that we can shut the door, but I was always carrying my ritual book with me. I was highlighting the parts that I had trouble with. I was circling the letters around the words so that I knew that this was supposed to be a the, and that was a that, and this is a this. I literally, any free moment, and I'm not trying to be gross here, but during comfort breaks, that's what I was on instead of looking at my social media feeds. If I was at lunch, I had my nose in that little tiny book. I remember one time somebody coming up to me and thinking that it was one of those little pamphlet books that, you used to get way back in the day from church. And I was like, no, it's not like that. It's just something that I'm studying for this other group that I'm in. And they're like, oh, okay. So that would be my ticket, is like literally just try to carry around your catechism with you everywhere you can. Okay, what if that's not an option? Here's the other thing that I did. I think I've shared this openly with you guys before, but I run every other day now, and now I'm doing workouts here at home. So I am out working out at least 30 to 40 minutes every day of the week. When I was going through my degree work, and this is my controversial hot take, I admit to it. On my iPhone, I opened up my voice memos, and I recorded myself reading the catechism. Now, here's why, because someone's going to say, oh, but don't we say as part of our obligation that we want to? Yeah, okay. We do say that. But I looked at it this way. My voice memo was locked behind, at the time, my fingerprint to open up my phone. Nobody had my code to get into my phone, and still nobody does. I felt that it was pretty secure. It was also buried in my voice memos app. So if you really, 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 really wanted to learn all of the secrets of Freemasonry, which you're not going to get in our little catechism books, and then when I was done with the degrees, I deleted the voice memo and it's gone. I have since talked to brothers who do have dyslexia or other severe learning conditions, and this tip to them has been a lifesaver and kept them engaged with the craft. Again, just be really careful with it. I would put my earphones in and I knew, okay, I'm going to be doing a 30-minute floor exercise workout at 5 a.m. in the gym by myself. I'm listening to myself do my catechism. I'm going to go out for a quick little out and back 2.5 mile run. I got 40 minutes. I'm listening to myself doing my catechism on my headphones. The one thing that I would advise, though, my brother, is if you are going to do I'm going to record myself doing the catechism to listen to it route, just make sure that all the words are correct. This isn't a way to get around that initial, like, you got to work with your Masonic mentor, you got to have everything down, because there's nothing worse, and I suffer from it, where a couple key words, I did not know them and recorded myself saying them wrong. So every time when I go to do that part of the ritual, I have to pause because my brain knows to overwrite what it was once told. The other key thing is, I would say, about recording yourself and then hearing it back on playback, I think it reduces that brain fart problem that a lot of us suffer from, because as you're going through the catechism, you're actually hearing the voice inside of your head give you the answers, instead of maybe a mentor or a classmate or another brother who had worked with you on your ritual. All right, I kind of joked about this earlier. Masonic books and libraries. Worshipful Brother Keith Reichelt asks, what's a book that every Master Mason should have in his library? Ooh, this is a good one. And with the number of writers and friends who are writers of the podcast, I got to be careful how I answer it. So my answer to this question has been, will be, and is never going to change: Contemplating Craft Freemasonry, Working the Way of the Craftsman. Yeah, it's a super long title. It's a book written by W. Kirk McNulty. And here's why I love this book. I got this years ago. And I mean, like, probably like 8 years ago. It was before COVID, definitely, where brothers from my lodge, we were getting ready to kind of break for the summertime. In New York, we don't meet in the summer. So our idea was to like form a little book club. And the idea was like, hey, we got 3 months here in the summertime. There were 3 of us in this group. Each one of us is going to call down a book, and we'll meet once a month. Usually it was at my townhouse, and I would like cook everybody dinner. And then whoever had the selection for that month, the book had to be available on Amazon, which this is, and it had to be less than $20, which it also is. And you'd get 4 weeks to kind of read it. The thing was, bring 3 things you read that you really were interested in, 3 that you had a question about, and then the last thing was just like anything cool you wanted to share with the group. And talk about like the most engaging 3 hours that I ever spent with guys. I really enjoyed that. Here's what I like about the book. It's basically set up as a chapter book with questions at the end. So whether you're working on yourself for like personal development or just looking for Masonic education, it has like probing questions at the end of the book that you can sit there and think about. The second thing is, this is great for just short talk bulletin replacement material in lodges. If there's a worshipful master who has open dates on his trestle board and you're looking for some discussion topics in your lodge, Contemplating Craft Freemasonry, Working the Way of the Craftsman by Kirk McNulty is your solution. And because I love you so much, I'll make sure to drop the link to purchase this on Amazon in the notes for this episode. Brother Christopher Schabach in Minnesota wants to know, what is your favorite degree, either York or Scottish Rite or Blue Lodge, and why? Ooh, good question. And you've kind of exposed the underbelly here. I am a York Rite Mason. However, I demitted from that. And I was a member of the Scottish Rite, but I never took my 32nd degree. I was a COVID Scottish Rite Mason and eventually also demitted from that. So at this point right now, I consider myself a very Blue Lodge-centric Mason. So throughout all of the degrees, my favorite degree in Freemasonry, and that's the first degree. And here's why. Like, I could tell you, third degree is amazing. I think the Heramic Legend, when performed correctly, can be the best piece of dramatic theater and entertainment than any brother will ever experience. And it really does on deeper levels. And so much allegory is in that, like really opened your mind to like what's possible in Freemasonry. Love the second degree too. You want to talk about personal development tools. A lot of history is in there. The brothers that can do, I've heard it called the winding staircase or that middle chamber lecture. Man, that is chef's kiss when it comes to ritual. Why the first degree then? Well, there's just the experience of it, because from, sounding like Eminem with, sweaty palms and mom spaghetti in your belly, just being super nervous, not knowing what you're getting into, the first time going into the preparation room, like, let's be honest, like, you don't forget your first experience. It shapes so much perspective about what everything else is going to be. It sets that level, that expectation, that bar. You never get it back either. The best way that I get glimpses into what my first degree experience was going and being a part of other brothers' degrees, which I also highly recommend doing. So yeah, first degree, there's so much esotericism that's baked into it as well. People write that off. Yeah, the historical lecture where you get into how lodges are situated, what the furniture situation might be, hear stories about Moses and the parting of the Red Sea. And then my favorite piece of Masonic ritual is buried in there, the point within a circle. Like, it's just so deep and so wide, and so much knowledge is in there that, yeah, first degree, hands down, every day and twice on Sunday. All right, we're bumping along here. Got a couple more to go. We're up to question number 10, and I want to thank Right Worshipful Brother Andrew Barnes for sending this question in. How do you reconcile the rule about not discussing politics or religion in Lodge when they are such important topics in the world? Ooh, that is a really good one. And ironically, I don't necessarily tease upcoming episodes too much, but next week, we are going to have Brother Matthew Brockbank on the Craftsmen Online podcast for an episode on Freemasons in politics. Matthew's actually running for an office in his community, North Greenbush, New York. And I can't wait to have that discussion with him on that. But how do I feel about the rule about not discussing politics or religion in Lodge? I've explained it this way before. We certainly do, but not in the sense like, oh, don't go clutching your pearls. Not in the sense that you think that we do. For example, I live just outside the nation's capital. My lodge right now is in Washington, D.C. Don't need to get to talking about the epicenter of American politics here too much, but when I'm talking with brothers before lodge, at the bar, in our building, we definitely do talk about politics. Do we talk about one person's viewpoint or one side being right versus the other? No. Do we have discussions where men are contributing and sharing ideas or opinions that might that could be considered challenging? Or better yet, their questions even make you raise questions about why certain things are? Sure. Does it ever get contentious? No. Have I ever seen guys get hauled out of the lodge room because it was about to come down to, throwing fists? No, doesn't happen here. I have heard of that in other jurisdictions. And I'm not going to get into the political fight about who was it and what were they saying and what was going on. I think you all know, we live in a very divided country, and the whole idea about Freemasonry is we're supposed to be able to come together around issues and, show the world how brothers act. But I think before we can do that, we do need to have a discussion. And that's what's cool about Freemasonry, with being like-minded and being around the right group of guys. Obviously, I'm not going to walk into a lodge that I don't know anybody in and say, hey guys, what do you think about fill in the blank? It's not going to happen. You got to take the temperature of the room when these conversations start happening. And if you know that anything you add is just going to throw gas on the fire, well, be responsible. And I think there's a lot of just personal conduct and how to be a good person that you learn in Freemasonry, to where you can tell that anything you say or add to the conversation isn't really going to take it to the level that we need it to be at. It's going to be more distracting and detracting than bringing people together. So that's how I feel about the political discussion. I've never heard a political discussion in a lodge meeting ever. And I can say now, again, I've had other brothers that have pointed out, well, wouldn't you consider saying the Pledge of Allegiance a political act? And I guess it could be viewed as that. If you've ever traveled to any other jurisdiction outside of the U.S., they don't say the Pledge of Allegiance to their flag before they start their meetings. But that's something that we do in America. Let's talk about religion. We discuss religion a lot in our lodge. As weird as it may sound, it's even a big part of our ritual. Now, I know what you're saying. Don't clutch your pearls on that one either. I mean, if we're actually using biblical passages and biblical stories as an allegory to share or communicate a Masonic lesson, that's religion. I think the key thing is the discussing of the religion. And I've seen programs where we have open books talking about the Quran, talking about the Bhagavad Gita, talking about ancient traditions and civilizations and what people believed and why they thought this way, and Greek god, Roman god, star signs, all of this stuff. I've heard all of these discussions in the lodge. The thing that makes it different, though, is there's no moratorium on you can't discuss that in a lodge. I think the thing is that once you start talking about one being better than the other or ruling all others, that's where the gavel has to drop, in my opinion, from the master. And I've never, ever seen that or been exposed to that in a Masonic lodge. So we definitely have discussions on religion, traditions in the historical context, but we're not sitting here telling you why one is better than the other and why you have to be a part of it. I just want to say this before we get to the final question here. If you've listened this long, if you've shared an email question, if you're one of our day one listeners on the Craftsmen Online podcast, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this episode. I think we should do this every year and maybe a couple times during the year. So definitely something for me to think about as we get ready for season 6 next January. Our last question comes from worshipful brother Justin Robinson, and we saved the hardest one for last. He asks, who is a dream guest you'd love to have on your show? Well, I don't have just one answer to that. I would like to talk to the following brothers: Brad Paisley, Representative Jim Clyburn from the South Carolina 6th Congressional District, or Shaquille O'Neal. And here's why. I would love to talk to either leaders in entertainment, leaders as sports figures, and have been leaders on teams, or leaders in our political system. I'd love to learn how the same lessons that I embrace as a Freemason and just as a regular guy in the community, how that impacts them and how they are lifting and using Freemasonry and the principles that we learn to become a better person and make this a better place, honestly. And you might think like, oh, well, a guy that's, a country singer that's on the stage, or a dude that can dunk a basketball and take down the whole backboard, or a member of Congress. Like, I would love to just hear how Freemasonry is a part of everyday life for them. As far as the guests on the show, let me just go out with saying this. I thank every single one of them, even our first guests from the very, 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 very first episode of the Craftsmen Online podcast, when I was still recording this program on an old gaming mic that my son had on the ironing board in the guest bedroom of our house, to where we are now with the rig that I get questioned with my wife. Well, you're buying another microphone? Of course. I want to make sure the show sounds good. But all of the guests that we've had, seriously, this would have been the most saddest and boring podcast, and I probably would have quit after 6 months if it was just me talking all the time. So thank to all of them. You have been a dream for me and a reality that I enjoy. All right, normally at this point, I thank my guest who is on this week, and that would just sound super gracious if I thank myself, so we're going to skip over that one. But I want to thank you, our listener, and especially those who support us on Patreon for continuing to do that. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us on Spotify or subscribe on Apple Podcasts. And seriously, the best thing that you can do to share the message of Craftsmen Online is tell another brother about it. I'm Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. Until we get some time together next week, let peace and harmony prevail.